Welcome to the Artists and Emotions podcast. I'm your host, Cody Alexander Curtis. And today I have with me someone who, in terms of production people I've had the chance to work with, this individual is the most recent one. And for any of you who have seen any of the marketing that has been going on for social media for the film Salt and Pepper, which was directed by Karen Johnson and which I was one of the leads of, the person I have with me was our assistant director on that set, and he's not only an assistant director, but he's also a filmmaker and a director, and he also does all the other things. This is Borneo, and once again, Borneo, I will let you introduce yourself because for those of you who don't know, I'll let Borneo just get into it because I don't want to butcher it. So Borneo, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me, man. Yeah, my name is Borneo. If that was if that was what we were trying to say. Or for those that can roll their R's, it's Borneo. And so yeah, I come from Macedonia, and I have a Macedonian like last name, and Borneo is my first name. Anyways, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, and I'm excited.
Yeah, no problem at all. So yeah, there we go. I mean, it's out there now. I'm not good with the Macedonian language or text, so I'm not going to try to pronounce and butcher your last name. But the one thing I will do before we sort of get into you and how you got started into filmmaking, for those of you who are listening, I have given praise to a lot of filmmakers on my podcast who have been guests. I need to give special praise to Borneo because anybody who runs a film set or has been a director or an actor or anything knows that the only way that a film set functions as fully and properly as it can is if they have a phenomenal assistant director and a great director. And for me, the amount of times I told you this while we were on said set is probably nauseating, but I'll just say it again here. How organized you were and how you kept everything in line and everything moving and flowing so we could have fun while also remaining professional. It was great. And it's something that I personally, with assistant directors on film sets, I haven't experienced a lot. And so it was kind of like a breath of fresh air. And I sincerely appreciated it. You were so professional the entire way through the process from pre-production to the end of the shoot, and it was just I mean, it was great to meet you. Obviously, you're here now, and so let's just start there. It's like just
Thank
so much praise for what you do.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate you saying that. Thank you for the compliments. It's something I really enjoy. There's a lot involved in working as a first assistant director, and it's not just scheduling. It's
Yeah.
overseeing lots of logistics and safety and taking little calculated risks all the time. But thank you. I'm glad I made an impression on you. And the most important thing is that we get that movie shot in the most efficient way possible. So I'm glad we got it all. We got
Yeah.
it. And yeah, I'm excited for what that movie's about to bring.
Yeah, you and me both. And we'll talk a little bit more about our like not going into full details about what the film is about, but I do want to talk about sort of the on-set experience because that was once again the way the entirety of that film set was run was incredible, especially considering once again as far as Karen goes, it was the first film that she's directed and made. And for a directorial debut and how she handled it, it was unlike a lot of sets I've ever experienced. But
Mhm.
first, let's rewind a little bit, because Borneo, you've been pursuing a creative career inside of the entertainment industry for a little while. So how did all of that get started for you? Like, when did your initial interest with filmmaking start?
Okay. Well, at 3 years of age, my parents got me in a theater group, and I was in a play called The Ants and the Crickets. I was one of the ants. We had like 30 ants, and I was one of the ants. And I forget exactly how it worked, but we prepared the show that we performed a bunch of times. I think it might have been a paid show. I don't think it was a like a local production bringing your own people. I think it was actually a paid production that people paid tickets to go see. Anyways, had lots of fun, and then I also come from a family of musicians, so the arts were always supported. And growing up, I went to different theater clubs. I was always part of the drama club or theater club in school. And over time, I got interested with filmmaking, especially with YouTube coming out and being able to post content over there. So it started with creating some short films for a class project, into creating another short film and getting into it. And then suddenly you're like, oh, I can write a script. So let me write a script and see how this works and how does this play with the other thing. And soon enough, I was in high school and I was making a lot of short films. And the high school I was with, they were focused on theater. They did lots in like math and computer science, but they also had a nice theater program. And they supported me by giving me school equipment to actually go out and shoot some short films and submit them to festivals, which is very nice. So I was always into that. Got into YouTube. I started posting a lot of YouTube videos, and I'll send you some of them if you haven't seen them. But they're all in Macedonian. And
Love it.
yeah, I fell in love with the craft, with the art form, and decided to pursue it full time as a career. So at that point, I was interested in just seeing what the rest of the world has to offer when it comes to college education. And I applied to JU, Jacksonville University. I got in and I got into their film program and have never regretted it. I got to be honest, I didn't know how involved of an art form it is.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff. And especially once you get into industry level, there's so much, from paperwork to politics to all these things that come together. But all in all, it is all for the art. And I'm glad to be a part of it. That's a little snippet of how I got started.
Yeah, I mean, that's phenomenal, and I have just so much respect for how you've been in pursuit of this for a little while, because from the conversations we've had, you've accomplished a lot, and in terms of your goals, your end goal is to eventually get into the DGA, isn't it?
Yes, I'm working on that right now. Collecting my days. We gotta submit like this book to the DGA, and so working on that, collecting my days, and getting all the stuff for all the people that are in the industry. They know all about it. You gotta get your call sheets, your PRs, your all that paperwork, and put it all in a nice little binder. So
Yeah, for if you're allowed to share, and for those who may not know, how many days and what are the specific to actually qualify to enter the DGA?
So you can get on the QL list is what's called, and you can qualify with 120 days on that list. There's very specific criteria on what kind of position you need to have and what those productions can be. It's not any production; it's certain tiers within SAG that you need to be a part of to make it happen, and certain budgets that you have to be. And so it really depends for whoever's pursuing, because different people are pursuing different positions. Someone might join as a UPM, someone might want to join as a second AD. So it's dependent on those positions. But yeah, so that's one way. And once you get on the QL list, as we call it, then you get into the DGA. But you still have to make up a bunch of days to fully get inside. So the usual plan is about 600 days. All of that is on the website.
Yeah. That which is it's a lot. For any of you who are listening who are curious, talking about the technical side and the specifics of pursuing a career in the entertainment industry, specifically eventually trying to join any one of the unions, there's a lot of technical aspects to it, and like Borneo said, just a lot of paperwork and things that you have to look into. And whether it comes to the Directors Guild, the Producers Guild, or SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, all the information about the guilds and what you can do to qualify, they're on basically every website in regards to the unions that you can find. But the one thing I appreciate about you and the one thing I relate to is the fact that when it comes to filmmaking and sort of the creative side of things, you have a general base knowledge of basically how everything goes. While you might have like an expertise in one area, whether it is acting, which is where you started out, or being a producer or a script supervisor or a PA, or you have a general base knowledge of how this whole thing is supposed to go. And for me, I think that's one of the reasons why you have sort of excelled the way that you have over the past few years, because we talked about the fact that I grew up in Maine and there's literally no industry here at all. So having an understanding of everything, at least in my opinion, I think is super super helpful. And from what I've seen and just the conversations with you or Nadir or Rachel, is the fact that just from an acting perspective, an actor who has a knowledge of how things go in terms of cinematography or blocking or what have you, it also makes those on the crew side of things just so much easier.
Mhm.
And this is where I want to turn things over to the salt and pepper set, because that's one of the things that I enjoyed the most in regards to how you handled everything, is that everything was, it kind of felt like controlled chaos, but in the most organized and fun way possible. Because from the minute that we met, I had a really good feeling. And then as I saw how you operated on that set and worked with Karen and just went through the entire process, my respect for you grew even more and more and more. And I took some things away from it because I'm actually in pre-production for a film I'm directing in July.
Mhm. Nice, nice. I mean, I've been seeing the Facebook posts, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because yeah, I do a lot of that. But I mean, it's just, and for me, the crew people, whether it's like talk shows or what have you, I don't think crew people necessarily get the respect that they deserve. And assistant directors are one of those things, because anybody who has been on a film set knows that when it comes time to be on a film set, the director isn't actually the person running the show in terms of keeping things moving. It is the assistant director, because it's like assistant director is the one who physically keeps things moving and getting us to the end of production, and then the director takes sort of the creative control of making sure everything is happening, but specifically working with the actors. And having you and Karen there working as a team was great. But now I'm going to shut up because I would love to hear sort of your side of things and what it was like for you, because I know specifically, besides Karen, if there was one person that I as an actor was talking to the most on set, it was you, just to make sure that you were getting everything that you needed. And I know what it's been like for me as a director or an assistant director to work with actors, but I would love to hear sort of your perspective on it. And in turn, for any actors who might be listening that wants to make the crew's lives easier on set, what would you would say to those people to make their lives and jobs easier?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
And it truly is that way that first ADs run the set. And that is not to say that, we own the set. This
No.
is just a place that needs to be handled because we need to get this movie from pre-production and finished production, finished principal photography. So the way it's been, and this art form has been out for like the past 120 years, but a lot of the things modeled within film and on a film set are borrowed from neighboring art forms, and so this is not an unfamiliar territory. So and I say that, you know whenever you want to put some kind of a production, you have to have a showrunner, you have to have somebody to channel it all in one place. and to get it together. And, luckily we've had unions and rules and all these things put in place so that we can all that do safely as we step on set. And the one thing that people that are not in the industry might not conceive it that way is that, like, the director, we try to make everything possible for them so that they can focus on talking to the cast and talking to the director of photography for what kind of shot needs to be done. And usually a lot of that is discussed even before. And so we take away everything else and put it into, departments, scheduling, paperwork. We channel it all so that there's one for once, you need somebody to have everything in one place. And the first AD does that. The first AD is involved in prep a lot, and you have to talk to all these departments to kind of channel information. A lot of times the first AD has all the info, more info than the producers, than the directors, knows, what kind of stuff is happening, knows if we're about to lose somebody because, they got, the casting got dropped, or we're missing a picture car, or this or that. So because and the thing is, we kind of try and make that point on set. If there's any communication that's needed, channel it through us, because we are a walking book, an encyclopedia, and we have to serve that information for everybody else. So when a producer comes in and they have a very specific question about the show notes or the script, the most likely the first AD has that answer, and it will have that over everybody else. But I say that, it's just a way to have a channel and to be able to communicate that for everybody else. And then I think one of the most important things, and some things that I've gotten through experience, is just learning how to run an effective set. And that is to make sure that we run things as smooth as possible, as fast as possible, without sacrificing artistic integrity. And it's truly a dance. It is a dance between getting what you want versus getting what you need from a director's standpoint. And we always want to try and please the director, but at certain times, the first ADs are fighting against time. And you really have, at the end of the day, you have to make your day. You have to make your day, because a lot of these movies and shows, they can't afford all the penalties that come with shooting overtime or having a forced call the next day. Which just for anybody not in the industry, it's just having to pay extra penalties because you're over the allotted hours that union SAG allows you to have. And so, all in all, I really enjoy my job. I really enjoy my job. And getting to your point about how could cast members make this whole show run more efficient is, and to what you said, over time, you kind of build experience and you learn everybody's position and you learn what they do. I've happened to learn them because I've actually done them. I started in camera. I was a camera utility. I did, second AC, first AC. I've done a bunch of those. I've done DIT. I've had several things, especially during college and grad school, that I did videography on my own. So I had many things that I had to handle on my own, and I learned all the aspects, from editing to DIT, pre-production, script writing, all that kind of stuff. And over time, I've learned what positions do. I've worked as a script supervisor. Sorry, I try to stay away from the word scripty. Speaking to someone that doesn't like it, is like, no, they should be called script supervisor. So I'm gonna just try to stick to that word. Um, but anyways, you just kind of you sort of learn. And even though, like, if I step on set, I do not call myself a script supervisor. I'm not a script supervisor. However, I've done it once or twice, and I've communicated with script supervisors a lot, that I know if we're getting something, we owe something else for the script supervisor. If there's three people talking, like a Mexican standoff, they're like three people talking, then you don't owe just basic coverage. You owe whoever that person's talking to on their side of the shoulders, who they're responding to. So you owe additional coverage that if you don't get it, your script supervisor is going to come up to you and say, hey, we really need to owe this. So you kind of foresee some things happening. And then as a first AD, you plan those things out. You say, okay, we got to take this, but I know we're going to owe this. I might go over there and double confirm, but you essentially have to plan it out. And it also, it depends on whether the movie's treating a shot list or they're just going with like basic coverage and going for inserts and pickups. It all depends. And so from that perspective, I've been able to learn things over time so that I can better fit the production needs, whether it's, building a 12 by takes time. I got to plan for that time if we're trying to put a hood, some kind of silk to soften the light. And to that point, when the cast knows what's happening out here, they can better serve the set by so much more, instrumentally more. You did great. You did so wonderful, especially from my perspective. I thank you for that because a lot of
Yeah.
times is not like that. A lot of times I have to fight for it to make it happen. And sometimes it doesn't happen. Like I really appreciate that whenever I walked up to you and your other Victoria, who was in Salt and Pepper, and I'd say, "Hey guys, do you mind if I get you for a quick rehearsal right now? They're setting up. We just need to get things going." And you always said, "Sure, let's do it." And I really appreciate that because a lot of people have, there's ego going on set. There's,
Yeah.
to have my food, I need to have my this, I need to have, the perfect environment. But you guys were always so supportive to like, yeah, let's get it going. And from an AD perspective, I really appreciate that because your rehearsal time is important so that in 15 minutes from now we can actually start blocking. We can have the scene, ready and we can start blocking. And then same thing, our director, Karen, she would always be like, "Yep, let's do it." Or let me finish this up real quick and let's do it. And I really appreciate that. So that's something that you knew that time is really important for us. And you knew to always be on your time. Second thing, which is I assist on set when needed, which I think you did a great job in. And this is more in Karen's territory in the DP is knowing what kind of shots we're getting so that you know how to better serve us. So when we reposition the camera a little bit and we just tell you, hey, could you favor the camera a little more? You know exactly why you need to favor the camera a little more because, we're in a certain element, there's a light hitting from a certain perspective, you want to reposition. So you immediately, we don't even have to tell you you're cheating and looking over there. You already, as an actor, know that we have to cheat a little bit over there because we've just repositioned from that perspective. So, the technical knowledge builds over time and it assists everybody. And it truly assists everybody. How much the gaffer knows about camera work helps a lot. And a lot of those people have done camera work themselves because it all goes together. It's a collaborative art form, and we're all coming together to make one single movie, and it all has to be on the same page. So it's important that we all know what the others are doing so that we can better serve ourselves as a single totality.
Yeah, and you hit on a lot of really, really excellent points. And for me, it's one thing I've always tried to tell fellow actors who maybe they don't want to necessarily get into crew or direct or anything, but even just having a basic knowledge of what every single kind of framing is within terms of making a film, from close-ups to mediums to medium close-up, just knowing what those things are will help the crew out so much. And the thing is, the more you stay in this and the more you realize how collaborative it is, learning about the crew side of things is actually fun because this is something else I've also told basically every actor I've met is that if you can walk onto a set and you can speak a crew's language as an actor,
Mhm,
it not only makes their jobs easier, but building friendships on whatever set you go on to becomes easier because you already have your foot like in the door, so to speak.
mhm,
Because you can talk with them. Because I remember it was one of my favorite things on the Salt and Pepper set is, I just while we were in the middle of a pause, I just started talking with Rachel about what kind of, equipment we were using for set, and that just sort of opened the door to talking with her and Nadir and you and with everybody. Now, once again, the fact that I grew up in Maine and I sort of forced myself to learn about everything, and now I'm not just an actor, but I'm also a director and a writer, that helps for sure. But even if actors don't do what I do, but if they take time to learn just the basics of a film set, that'll make everybody's lives so much easier. And I will say, between you and Karen, the fact that you knew how to work with me and Victoria as actors, that also made our lives easier. And the one thing that me and Victoria talked about with Karen is when we were doing the rehearsals, we didn't want to add any sort of emotion to what we were doing. We basically just wanted to go through the lines. We wanted to go through the lines and just made sure we had them down. So when we added the blocking and all the technical stuff that you guys were helping us out with, we could give Karen and you guys and the story as much respect as we needed to. And at the end of the day, I'm just the collaboration part of the whole process for me is now my favorite part of it.
Yeah.
It's like I enjoy not for the longest time, I felt guilty the fact that I just wanted to pursue being an actor, but now I love being able to be on a set and jump into a crew position if I need to, if
Mhm.
they need help. And it just and once again, that's one thing I appreciate about you is the fact that between our conversations and your attitude about telling stories and your passion for it, I love people who are in the industry for the right reasons, and they're the people I feel I get the closest to. And you, every single time that we talked, I was like, he's here just because he loves being here and he loves telling stories and he just want to keeps growing and keep telling better and better stories. And I can't even say how much I appreciate that because, like you said, there sometimes can be egos in this industry. And a good portion of the time, there are people who get into this industry in the first place, not because they want the team building effect of it, or they want to tell good stories, or they want to be a part of the collaboration. It's because they want fame and fortune. And that's sort of an attitude that pushes people away.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And you can tell, you can almost always tell what's the reasoning, but it's really sort of. I think you're doing yourself a service if you go in it for the right reasons. And you can speak a little more. I'd actually like to know what motivated you to go in as an actor. But I know that in my case, I sort of fell in love with it over the years, developed a passion for film, watching movies, making movies. And I know when I went in college and I got introduced to film history, I sort of found found my passion again because now there's this huge, I learned about the French New Wave and all these films that we had in the past 50 to 100 years that I've never seen before. And there's movements. There's, Italian Neo Renaissance, and you can pick like 10 different movies from that. And they're all so interesting because it's a movement of film that happened at that point in time. And so it's kind of like finding your passion all over again. It was one more thing to be like, okay, this is how they did it then. This is what has changed. This is what we do now. Sometimes we do art films, sometimes we do stuff that's more on the entertainment side.
Yeah.
And I've definitely found myself, a good reason to stay in the industry. And a lot of us, especially in the start, we take anything we can get. I've done the 17, 18 hour sets for zero money and the gas stipend that they promise and they never give to you. And so if you know that, and that's crazy. I speak to people outside because not every job, rarely are jobs like that you work for 12 hours plus and you come to do it the next day and the next day for 16 days in a row with maybe 1 or 2 days off and you make a feature film. It's got there has to be a burning passion in order for somebody to commit like that because the finances a lot of time aren't the motivator because
No, not at all.
usually in many cases there aren't any, but in other cases there are. And this industry is alive because of how much finance is involved around it. So anyways, I am curious to know, what was your motivation to go in as an actor?
My motivation, I'd say the acting motivation I think was always innately there. I just didn't realize it until I became an adult
Mhm,
because my parents have always been involved in the arts, not in a like pursuing the film or entertainment industry sort of way, but my mother, when she was growing up, she was a chauffeur for Maine State Music Theater, which is a professional, like off Broadway theater that is in Maine that brings actors from Actors Equity in New York, and they do shows here all the time. And she brought people to the shows. She got to hang out with the actors. She got to see every show that they put on for free. And then my father has always he doesn't do it so much now, but he always played instruments like trombone and guitar, and he was in a barbershop quartet for a little while. And they've always been a fan of stand-up comedy. So I've always had sort of this love for the arts. And growing up, I did what basically everybody did in middle school and elementary school is like choir and theater and all this stuff. And then when I got to high school, that's when my love for becoming an actor shifted because I had a really phenomenal acting teacher. His name's Kevin O'Leary, and, of course, you say Kevin O'Leary, everybody immediately thinks Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, but it wasn't him. But this guy, looking back as an adult, I realized sort of the how fortunate I was because Kevin O'Leary is somebody when he was growing up, when he graduated high school, he was an athlete turned into an actor who got cast in every lead role as soon as he started doing theater in high school. And then he went out and studied directly under Lee Strasberg at the Lee Strasberg Institute in New York. And anybody who knows Lee Strasberg studied right under Stanislavski. It's like, or the Stanislavski method. And he's somebody who could have gone to Hollywood or stayed in New York and did Broadway, but he decided to come back and teach. He decided to be a teacher because that's what he was called to do.
mhm.
But because of that, because of his experience with dealing with this, he never treated us as if we were lesser than a professional repertoire theater company. It was amazing, and that love and teaching us about the business of the industry and how hard it is, and just knowing that this is what we have the capability to do. I think my love for being an actor was fully cemented when we did Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman my senior year of high school, and this is his favorite American play, and essentially our schedule was like this: Monday through Friday we would go to school, and then we would be out by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He'd say, you have an hour to just go hang out, go grab lunch, because come back here, we're going to rehearse from 3 until probably midnight, just so you're aware, 11 o'clock midnight. And then on the weekends it would usually be one. If we were in tech week it was both days, but we would go from 8 to 8
Mhm.
rehearsing. And throughout that whole process, yeah, we were all exhausted, but I just realized how much I loved it. And me becoming crew, that was sort of at a point of necessity because it was my senior year of college, 2020. I
Uh-huh.
wonder what happened that year. But I had directed a film that was my capstone project, and it was a story that was important to me, but it wasn't something like I was gonna pursue to be a director or whatever. It was just something that I wanted to tell. And then I had a short film script, which because of COVID, I thought just wasn't gonna happen. And then some of my classmates came up to me. They're like, "There's enough here that you could probably turn this into a feature."
Mhm.
And so I did. I we follow when the time came for production, we followed all of the rules and protocols that we were supposed to run a set during COVID. And it was a nightmare, and it was, and by a nightmare, I mean, literally, it's we shot throughout the month of October. Every day was at least 15 to 16 hours long, and we shot 3 days every weekend. So in total, 15 days for the entire month of October. And I swore that I was never gonna direct again, but here we are moving on into my 6th production that I'm directing, and
That's awesome.
acting is still, like, first and foremost my love, but the thing that I've found is that learning so much about crew and directing and having an opportunity to be on so many sets and be in crew positions, all of that stuff for me being like, all that stuff, I feel has made me a better actor because it allows me to be a better actor for crew.
Yeah.
And for me, at the end of the day, being And being an actor, while I am very passionate and I wanna do my job well, I care more so that the crew that I'm working with and the director that I'm working with is getting their vision and their work, and I wanna be as on point so I can do my job to make sure that I'm not holding anything up, so if we can wrap earlier than intended or on time, which can be rare sometimes, but making sure that everybody else's lives is easier. So I guess that's sort of the main thing. That's why I started acting, and that's sort of been my whole journey. There's a longer story to that, but that's sort of like the Cliff Notes version of this whole process.
I got you. Do you feel like you've been typecasted sometimes?
Oh, definitely. Let me put it to you this way. All throughout in every Shakespeare show I have done, I have been the young male ingenue. I mean, Romeo, Hamlet, Lennox, Lysander in Midsummer Night's Dream, and then Ferdinand and William Shakespeare's The Tempest. Those have been the roles I have played in every Shakespeare
Who
show.
are you in Death of a Salesman?
Death of a Salesman, I was Bernard.
Oh,
Which is funny to me now because I realize at this point I could play Bernard again, but I think where I am now in my career, I would probably be cast as not Bernard, but,
the other B?
yeah,
Biff?
not Biff, yeah,
I
like that
Biff.
like, that's ultimately in terms of theater, that unfortunately, they don't really do auditions for Death of a Salesman that much anymore, which I'm saddened by because Biff Loman is a dream role for me. I wanna return to that show and play that role, but I mean, I will say the other side of the coin is I've always been cast as antagonists,
Mm.
which is like not my preference, but for me now, I think it was yeah, basically it was Salt and Pepper. It was Karen and you guys that allowed me to actually break away from what I've always done and showcase that there is a different side of me as an actor.
Mhm.
Because obviously, look, guys, I'm 5'2". In terms of like traditional leading man status in Hollywood, I'm not there unless you're talking about Mickey Rooney.
Uh,
Uh, but it's something that I've been sort of trying to gear myself up towards, and that's sort of where I want my trajectory to go.
mhm.
But yeah, like, while that was a little bit of a longer answer, yes, I would say at a certain point I have been typecast in for multiple years in my life for projects.
Well, I mean, that's good. And on a personal sort of thinking as a filmmaker, I do value whenever I've directed a film of my own, I value an actor that is themselves and you cast them because of who they are and they just get to portray a slightly modified version of themselves into your movie versus actors that are adaptable to everything because I mean think about a lot of the major movie stars that we know today when you hire somebody like when you get Jim Carrey you get Jim Carrey to be Jim Carrey. You don't
Yeah,
get him to be something else. He brings that energy into whatever you're doing. And
yeah,
I do think it plays in your favor, and it played in your favor for Salt and Pepper. So it's something you have. I haven't seen much. I've seen your demo reel. I've seen some of your stuff that you've sent me, but I haven't seen the plays that you talk about. But
yeah.
yeah, I
Well,
do. It does play in your favor.
yeah, and I appreciate that, and for me, I completely agree with you. I mean, Ryan Gosling just came out and basically said that every role he's portrayed, he's not really modifying himself that much. It's really he's Ryan Gosling through and through, whatever role you cast him as,
Yeah.
because he's Ryan Gosling, and that's not a bad thing. And I think at the end of the day, that's sort of the heart of all of this is the fact that being yourself, whether it's being an actor or being on crew or being an assistant director, just being so thoroughly you is also a thing that makes our lives as a whole in this industry just so much easier. Because there's a reason why the phrase fake it till you make it is around. It's because for the longest time, we all thought that's what we had to do. I mean, even still, I don't think I know an actor alive in my personal circle who has not done that at least a couple of times while trying to pursue this thing, where they try to just go so outside of themselves to get work. But then as soon as they reel everything back in and fully allow themselves to be them, that's when work actually starts happening. And I just I should I turn this into a giant crew shout out? I probably should, because once again, as someone who has worked from 2018 to 2022, I did a couple of acting things, so it was basically all crew work. So yeah, shout out galore here, because I don't think crew gets the shout outs that they deserve. Because everybody knows that I really love what Francis McDormand said a little while ago, the fact that film is not an actor's medium, it's an editor's medium. And that's something I thoroughly appreciate, because my friend Sarah Massey is an editor and she's a filmmaker and a camera op. And then, of course, there's you, the AD, and the gaffers and the camera operators and everybody else. I just don't think they get the love that they deserve to, especially since, look, acting, yeah, there's a certain amount of vulnerability and heart and technical knowledge we got to know, but actors are not what make a film happen.
Mm.
Actors are not the ones. And look, if you're an actor who's a director, that's a little different, but actors are not the ones finding the locations and securing all the paperwork and getting the insurance and doing all of the things to make sure a film can happen without hopefully something going wrong. That's all crew. That's the director and the entire team beside them. And I have such a great affinity and appreciation for what you do and for what Karen did and for everything. Because also, if a crew can function at its maximum capacity and everybody knows what their jobs are, days become shorter, at least in my experience. It's
Absolutely.
And that's the thing I loved about Salt and Pepper is our first day, I don't think we were expecting to wrap as early as we did. Sure, it may have been like an hour off, but still, it's like everybody came to play and everybody did their job so phenomenally well. And once again, just circling back to my appreciation of you, because in terms of how you talked with not just Karen as our director, but also Nadir as our DP, or Rachel as our camera op, or any of the other handful of crew members we had on set, you know how to talk to every single one of them to make them feel included and know what their responsibilities are, but also to just keep the thing moving like a fine-tuned locomotive. You did
Thank you.
so well.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And the one thing that is difficult when working on a project to project, working freelance, and I'm just speaking from this side, from a side of just production making it happen, is that it is a crew that a lot of times they meet there for the first time. And even though these positions are known as to what people do, we still have to find the flow. Everybody has to find the little things that they're responsible of, and it that can take time. I've been on sets where it's a studio set, and there's some studios out there that do features in 6 to 7 days, very short schedules, but it is all crew that's from within, and it's all sound stages, and everybody knows exactly what they're doing. If there's a company move, that company move takes 30 minutes because everybody knows who's taking the slate, who's taking this handle from that camera, who's taking this cable, and people just like once we call, all right, it's a move. You just see all of the ants in production. Everybody just go and goes to their place and moves. But when we're dealing with movies like on location, and then also stuff that's independent that we have to just assemble the crew on the day, I really try to find like like a tone that everybody could follow, that this is what we're doing, this is what what's happening. And I at least try to communicate. I think every department should have their own little meetings within themselves to kind of establish how things would go best for themselves. And I always have a separate 80 staff meeting where I say, all right guys, this is what we're dealing with on this production. We got kids, we got this, we have this location, there's stipulations coming from this place or this place, and this is how we're going to handle it. And we always try to make people safe. I remind them like, hey, let's make sure cables are taped up. Let's make sure, don't sit on the Apple boxes. They're not chairs, all that kind of stuff. And let's make sure we echo that, because the AD team also gets new people all the time. Whenever I can, obviously I have people that I've worked with before that I have a flow with, but a lot of times you're thrown in the mix and you just got to work with whoever's there. And you got new PAs, a new AD staff team, and you just have to all be on the same page, because here's the thing: it doesn't show until it shows. It doesn't show until you see that you're majorly behind, and then everybody's like, "What did you do?" It doesn't become a problem until it is a problem. And that's with a lot of the industry. It's like nothing's a problem until somebody asks, hey, where's the picture car? Nobody picked it up from the location we were supposed to 3 hours ago. Whose fault is it? This person didn't remind that person didn't. And it kind of goes down, and then it becomes a huge problem until it wasn't a problem. So, and another thing that I wanted to piggyback on a point you had earlier, which is what I try to reiterate. A lot of times people know that, but it's a helpful reminder. You have directors on set that have a very sealed vision. It's like this is the way it was written, and this is how I envision it. And now this vision is coming to life. And a lot of times, this vision is costing a lot of money. So, there's people that have waited for a long time to make this happen for them. And we finally get the show on the road. And one thing that I try to remind as a first assistant director is like it's three movies that we're making. You made one when you wrote it. We're making one now based on these current circumstances, and another one will be found in post production that whoever the editor is will find it. It is very difficult unless I've known, it hasn't happened to me, but I've known where they've had the budget to well, it was the person directing that's an animator. He knows how to animate, so he animated the entire film before he actually went into production. So it was like a vacuum sealed film. Like this is what we do. This is how the camera moves. This is where the actors are. Done. It can't be slight modifications, but that's rare to non-existent. Most of the time, you just have to work with your circumstances, and you have to trust within that circumstance at that time. And to that point, I know there's a whole bit of like the editor is the artist and the Kuleshov effect and all that. And it's true. It really is true. I do think that whoever you choose as your editor is responsible for how this movie is going to come together, which is why a lot of people just want to edit their own things because they've done it before. They know the vision they're trying to tell, and they can put it that way together. Anyways, bouncing from production into post production, but yeah, because I know that you're getting into your own stuff right now, and so just saying that out for the universe, I know I try and have that conversation with directors because it helps me out. Not everything has to be locked in the way it is. Sometimes we just have to work with our circumstances, and it's okay if we don't have the perfect thing that was envisioned in pre-production. We have to make what we have because it's never going to be perfect. Nothing
No.
show up exactly how you envisioned it. From the moment you step on set, the room is going to be smaller that you thought it would be. The pictures from the tech scout will not match what you had in your brain for how we can't fit the camera here, and we can't really tear up this wall. So we got to make concessions. So we got to figure out how to make this work, and that's fine. That's every single movie, and it comes out fine. That's the beauty of it. It's unexplored territory a little bit, but it all comes together at the end beautifully, harmoniously, and everybody worked together to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up because for me, as a director who's also acting in the film I'm directing, it's a good point to remember. I'm also editing it.
There you go.
But
Love it.
but, the it's interesting because I would also say the film that you get while you're tech scouting also is not the film that you get at the end of the day, and that's something that me and my DP, we had to talk about because obviously pre-production, I'm somebody who likes to be overly prepared, so we've been in pre-production for 4 months now, and the the fact of the matter is that when we got there on our tech scout, um, a lot of the things that I had in mind, they did have to be changed because of the layout we had. Because 'cause we're shooting in a very 1800s colonial American house, and anybody who has been inside of those spaces knows that the houses, the hallways, the staircases, they're not as roomy as modern day houses are. Like, their halls and their staircases are so narrow. Like, so much so that it's hard to fit 2 people inside of them. Maybe you can fit 3 if you have, like, 2 people back to back. But so but the thing that we changed was there's a lot of other stuff we didn't even recognize was there until we were there. Like, there's a bunch of stained glass windows in the house that now are gonna be a replacement for some of the other things we had in mind. And that kind of stuff is fun, but at the same time, it does force you as a director and as an actor who's gonna be in it. We are very fortunate that our lead actress could be there for the tech scout for us so that we could basically run over everything we had in mind and have a general idea of how things are gonna go. Because this shoot is also only gonna be for 1 day, and it's super, super technical. Like, that's the one thing I can say about it. Um, but all the points you brought up, I think are great. And of course, all the technical stuff and editing and everything else, this isn't just for like actors and crew people, but as you said, people who just want to be directors or directors who want to edit the films that they're doing. That basically means that you've gotta be thinking not like those things, but like an editor the entire time you are putting your movie together, from pre-production to post-production, and that changes the landscape of everything,
Mhm.
which is it's not a bad thing, it's just it's a different dynamic, but that's another reason why being someone who is multifaceted in this industry is such a bonus, because it also means it opens your world to the sort of people that you can talk to and the sort of groups that you can meet and the people that you can network with. It just it for me, it's the one reason when I talk to actors, the one thing I will say is, number 1, if you're pursuing this industry, do not look at what I'm doing right now because you are not gonna be able to keep up. But because I do everything and I don't ever stop, and I'm probably gonna burn my out at self out at some point. But the other thing is, don't just put yourself in one box,
Mhm.
because the one thing that I have found is that a lot of actors also really like writing. And it's something that they don't necessarily feel comfortable going into, and my thought is, if any of the actors that we look up to are
Mhm.
deciding to get into writing and directing later on in their careers, why can't we just start early? I mean, everybody knew Jodie Foster from Silence of the Lambs, but I don't think anybody really recognized that she started writing and directing shortly after that.
Mhm.
It's like, and she's a great director and a great writer. It's just I've it just opens your world up. That's all I can say. But next thing I want to go, and I guess this will sort of be our last point, is because this is the Artist and Emotions podcast, and getting into our feelings is sort of partially what we do here. But for you, Borneo, as much as you're comfortable sharing, what has been the most difficult part for you pursuing this industry?
There's many things that are difficult. It's hard to pinpoint it to one. And being an artist working in the cinema arts and just working in the arts in general, there's risk inherent into everything. And it is not, nothing is a sure thing. So a lot of us have to work freelance. And I mean, and you have no choice because
No.
you just have to. It's not, and that's difficult to it's difficult to describe to people that aren't from this field, that it's not like I can just knock on somebody's door and get a full-time job in the film industry, because it's not like that. Almost every single movie, I'm gonna say almost, because there's studios, there's production companies that hire, like, have stuff staff from within. But so much of it is just assembled and picked for that show based on that circumstance and the location is shooting in. So it's, for us, we're working freelance all the time and we are on project to project to project. And it brings a degree of uncertainties because the medium is it's never the same. You're shooting sometimes different formats, feature, shorts for this kind of this kind of medium. It's for web or it's for streaming, and you have to follow certain protocols for that.
Sometimes there's strikes.
Right, and then you're also prone to outside stuff like that. And I think that's one thing that taught us is that we really have to, as filmmakers, we gotta have a secondary option to go to if our primary option isn't available. And that's good in life because nothing is ever ideal. The most secure job that you might have in a 9 to 5 might collapse overnight, and it's good to always be proactive about your thinking. I'm not going to say that what happened was good in terms of like losing work, but it definitely reminded people that we really have to keep thinking outside the box. We can't just lock in on what we know. We got to expand. And that's what I've known from my position is like you got to have yourself figured out on what you're going to do. You got to be, like this week and this week I'm here, but I'm not working the next 2 weeks. So I got to start figuring that out now. I have to start looking for where my place would be in 2 weeks from now because if I don't do it right now, I'm gonna be sitting at home for two weeks, and then I
Yeah.
might do that. Um, so you really have to start thinking proactively about it and start building your schedule, and be very vigilant about your finances, how you handle all of that, because the industry is unpredictable, and
Yeah.
in the most secure contract, that show could drop or it could be canceled, or it was greenlit for the past year, and then suddenly somebody's iffy about it, one of the investors, and they pull it back. And you might get a little kill fee, but you're done, like you're sitting at home. And so you really have to be very strategic, have to make these calculated risk decisions. I think it's funny you spoke about 2020. I met a crew that the entire G&E team made a company, opened up a